Devastating rejection turns epic dream. Billionaire proposes dance to girl in tattered dress. It was a night of glimmering stars, where the spotlight flickered nervously against the backdrop of an exclusive charity gala. The air buzzed with excitement, thick with the smell of money and desperation. Jewel-encrusted gowns swirled through the crowd, laughter mixed with the occasional haughty sneer. But at the edges, where shadows danced like specters, stood Amelia, a girl in a tattered dress. It was shocking to see her there, a stark contrast to the rich and famous. Yet, she held a quiet grace, as if she belonged, even when her heart felt like it was bursting out of her chest. Amelia had never intended to crash this elite world. A whisper of hope had brought her here, a chance to meet someone extraordinary. But that hope began to crumble as she witnessed the way people looked past her, their eyes darting away. Each dismissive glance felt like a fresh wound. She shivered, feeling like a ghost among the living, but something tugged at her, a strange energy prickling her skin, a feeling that somehow tonight was going to change everything. Then, through the throng, emerged the billionaire. James Blackwood, his name sent shivers down spines. He was as enigmatic as his fortune. With tousled dark hair and piercing blue eyes, he was the kind of man who could make the world stop turning with just a smile. Yet beneath that charm lay rumors too wild to ignore. Some said he was cursed, others claimed he was haunted by his past. But Amelia only saw the glimmer of kindness when he caught her gaze. The moment felt electric, defying all logic. Her heart raced in disbelief. And then it happened. Whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd, anxious and expectant. James approached Amelia, ignoring the disapproving murmurs from elites, their brows furrowing in judgment. He leaned down, his voice low and inviting. "Would you dance with me?" It felt surreal, like a dream teetering on the brink of nightmare. They stood, bound in a moment that felt more like a fairy tale than reality. Could this be a spark of something real, or was it simply a cruel trick? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Then, the moment hung in the air. Friends gasped, foes sneered. Time slowed as she felt the weight of all those judgmental eyes, their thoughts cutting like knives. Surely, this couldn't be real. Her heart thumped, pounding louder than the swirling music. Would she dance with a billionaire, or would fate snatch that dream away? As he reached for her hand, Amelia found herself at the crossroads of despair and hope, teetering on the edge of something monumental. The crowd watched, their breath held, as if the universe awaited her answer. Would she take his hand and leap into the unknown, or would fear keep her anchored in that tattered dress? Amelia hesitated, heart pounding like a drum in a chaotic symphony. The world around her faded, melting into a blur of glittering chandeliers and disapproving faces. This was no ordinary moment. It felt monumental, charged with electricity. As James Blackwood's hand lingered in the air, she felt an urge she couldn't quite explain. She wanted to say yes. What would happen if she took that leap? Would the night be as magical as it felt? Or would it evaporate into a cruel disappointment, the laughter ringing in her ears turning into mockery? The crowd seemed to lean closer, breath held, waiting for her response. "Please," James urged softly, sincerity shining in his blue-eyed gaze. "I don't bite. Just one dance." The warmth of his voice sent shivers down her spine. The stage was set. Her heart fluttered dangerously, a tattered dress ready to glide into a world that felt impossibly out of reach. Amelia took a deep breath, conviction bubbling up. This was a chance to break free, to step beyond her reality. With trembling fingers, she grasped his hand, feeling the electricity spark between them. The whispers in the room swelled, mingling with a melody that now seemed sweeter, more inviting. As they moved toward the center of the dance floor, the eyes of Elise turned into searching daggers, slicing through her confidence. But with each step she took, the ground felt steadier beneath her. The music swelled, wrapping around them like an embrace. James twirled her gracefully, and for a fleeting moment, she forgot the stares, the judgments. The world melted away, leaving just the two of them dancing under stars that felt almost too bright. Warmth spread through her as she gazed up at him, marveling at how he looked at her, as if she was the only person in existence. "This is all a bit crazy, isn't it?" she breathlessly asked, laughter bubbling in her chest. "Maybe," he smiled, an enigmatic flicker playing across his features. "Or maybe it's just what we both need." Just as Amelia began to lose herself in the moment, an ear-piercing scream cut through the air, snapping her back to reality. Heads turned wildly, gasps echoing as a figure burst into the gala, disheveled, panicked, and wild-eyed. A palpable tension filled the room, the celebratory atmosphere morphing into confusion and dread. "James, you need to come. It's your father." Amelia's heart dropped. The billionaire's face went white, his grip on her tightening, pulse racing. She felt the answer dangling just out of reach, swirling like smoke against the backdrop of chaos. Who was this intruder? What was happening? James's eyes darted back to Amelia, filled with a mixture of urgency and fear. The whispers had shifted now, they were laced with concern and intrigue, questioning what this sudden disruption meant. "What do we do now?" Amelia asked, heart pounding in rhythm with the frantic energy surrounding them. James hesitated, glancing over his shoulder at the chaos unfolding behind them. "I need to go," he said, voice low, but the weight of his words felt like a heavy anchor. "Are you coming with me?" The choice loomed large. Stay in this whirlwind of glitz with curious eyes watching, or plunge into a world of uncertainty with a captivating stranger who had just turned her night upside down. The air felt thick, swirling with possibilities, leaving Amelia to wonder what lay ahead. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a night that would unravel secrets, confront fears, and challenge her to embrace a destiny she never imagined. Would she follow him into the chaos, or was it time to turn back? Her heart raced as she prepared to make the most important decision of her life. Amelia's mind spun as she locked eyes with James, his expression desperate and fierce. Torn between the thrilling promise of adventure and the safety of familiar grounds, she felt her pulse quicken. What awaited them outside those gleaming doors? "I'll come with you," she finally stammered, feeling her voice slice through the heavy atmosphere. It echoed in her mind as a pact, sealing a moment she'd never be able to reclaim. James gave a brief nod, a flicker of gratitude sparking across his features, and he pulled her along behind him. They wove through the crowd, a current of shock and whispers trailing in their wake. The music faded, replaced by the sound of her racing heart and the urgency in James's footsteps. As they burst out of the grand double doors, the cool night air hit Amelia like a slap. Stars blinked down at them, uninvolved observers to the turmoil boiling in her chest. The chaotic scene erupted around them. Guests clustered in small groups, their faces etched with concern. A few were already clutching phones, fingers flying over screens, likely calling for help. "Where is he?" James's voice cut through the noise, raw and urgent. She caught a glimpse of a man in the distance, pale, thrashing through the crowd. Her stomach twisted. James's father was somewhere in that chaos, but how was he involved? Questions flooded her mind. What could possibly have happened? Amelia had followed him into the storm without knowing the first thing about the man she just danced with. A steely breeze whisked past, and the tension felt electric. She had left the security of the ballroom, a place where the most pressing concern was which stiletto to wear, and stepped into a shadowy reality. Was she prepared for this? Over there, Jane shouted, pointing toward a cluster of people gathered near a sleek black sedan. Amelia's gaze fixed there, and dread settled in the pit of her stomach. Pushing her way through the mass of obscured silhouettes, she glimpsed a figure on the ground. James's father lay sprawled against the pavement, chest heaving and face drawn. His breath escaped in ragged packets, as if each inhalation was a struggle. "Dad!" James knelt beside him, panic radiating from his every move. Amelia hovered close, unsure and helpless, as the crowd became a chorus of anxiety-fueled remarks and frantic confusion. "Someone call an ambulance!" a woman cried, trembling as she dug into her purse for her phone. "What happened?" James's voice broke, shaking like a leaf. "I don't know," a young man replied, his brow furrowed. "He just collapsed." Out of nowhere, Amelia felt time stretch as she stood frozen. The sounds of laughter and the warmth of the gala felt like a distant dream. The man before her, a figure of authority, a titan of industry, was now vulnerable. The imperfection, the fear, seeped into her bones. As James cradled his father's head, she saw the hopelessness lingering in his eyes. Tears threatened to spill, a torrent of emotion waiting to break free. Her heart ached with an unfamiliar weight. "Stay with me, Dad. Help is coming," James begged, voice cracking. He grasped his father's hand tightly, but no response came. The man's eyes drifted, staring into nothingness. Suddenly James jerked his head up, his gaze locking onto hers. "Amelia, I need you. Please." "Hold his hand. Talk to him, he needs to hear you." With her heart hovering in her throat, she stepped forward, trembling fingers brushing against the elder Blackwood's wrist. She could hardly breathe. "What do you say to someone at a moment like this?" "I'm here." "You're not alone," Amelia whispered, desperate to believe the words she spoke. James's eyes shone with an intensity that pierced through the haze of fear. "What is happening? Why isn't he waking up?" Amelia didn't know how to answer. The uncertainty hung thick in the air as sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each agonizing second. As the crowd parted for medical responders rushing in, a shiver of dread coursed through her. Little did she know, the night's events were just beginning. Would this accidental entanglement lead to heartbreak, or something altogether darker? Unbeknownst to them, the night still held secrets that could shatter everything they thought they had stepped into. How much more chaos could unravel before morning light broke through? Amelia held her breath as the medics arrived, their presence bringing a deceptive sense of order to the chaos. Bright lights sliced through the dark, illuminating the frantic scene. She could feel the weight of every gaze, every whisper around her. People were afraid, and that fear crept into her own heart, curling around her chest like a vice. "Let us through!" one of the medics barked, shoving aside the onlookers. Panic-filled faces became a blur, the crowd parting to let the professionals do their work. James tightened his grip on his father's hand, anguish etched sharply onto his features. "Please, just hold on," he implored, desperation coating his voice. Amelia watched the medics move with precision. They assessed the scene, checking for vital signs, exchanging urgent glances that spoke volumes of their concern. "We need to stabilize him," one of them said, quickly pulling out equipment while the other started chest compressions. Amelia could hardly comprehend the gravity of it all. Her heart raced like a runaway train, an overwhelming sense of helplessness filling the space where courage should have been. "Will he be okay?" Amelia asked, her voice trembling. She wanted hope, but the words felt inadequate as soon as they left her lips. "They're doing everything they can," a woman beside her muttered, her own voice shaky. The sirens wailed louder now, cutting into the night. But they were not just sirens. They were a herald of something far more terrifying. The urgency became palpable. Each second seemed to stretch, drawing out the suffering and uncertainty that loomed over them. As the ambulance pulled up, confining moments felt like lifetimes. With deft movements, the medics lifted James's father onto a gurney. "We're taking him in now," one of them shouted. "Can I go with him?" James pleaded, his eyes wide with fear, his breath coming in quick bursts. "Only family," a stern voice replied without hesitation, moving briskly. "Amelia." James turned to her, eyes filled with panic. "What do I do?" "Stay with him," she shouted back, her heart pounding as she reached for his arm, her touch grounding him for just a moment. "I'll be right behind you." The gurney rolled toward the ambulance. As they pushed James's father away, Amelia felt a surge of dread. Would they find answers behind those doors? The crowd began to dissolve, some returning to their gala, while others murmured darkly among themselves. "Did you see him collapse? What do you think happened? It was so sudden." Amelia's mind swirled. Yes, what happened? How did a moment of joy at a dance turn into this nightmare? Her gut twisted with foreboding. There was something sinister creeping around the edges of her thoughts. As she made her way to the ambulance, flickers of movement caught her eye. A figure in a dark coat leaned against the shadows, unnatural within the turmoil. Amelia squinted, trying to make out their features, but the figure melted away like smoke before her eyes. "Amelia!" James's voice echoed, cutting through her confusion. She rushed to the rear doors of the ambulance as they swung closed. The sound of the latch clicking into place sent her heart into a free fall. "Wait, James!" But it was too late. The vehicle lurched away, lights flashing against the midnight gloom. Panic clawed its way back into Amelia's chest. She could feel something darker than the fear of the moment creeping through the night. She turned back, instinctively searching the crowd, scanning every face for that man in the shadows. But he was gone. What just happened? She whispered to herself. Who was he? Whatever lingered on the edges of her awareness felt unsettling, as if a storm was brewing just out of sight. As she stood there, choking on uncertainty, the first drops of rain began to fall, each drop echoing the gravity of the night. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. What other secrets lay entwined in the night's unfolding chaos? Amelia stood frozen, rain slipping down her forehead, blending with the hot sting of unshed tears. She felt the chill creeping into her bones, a stark contrast to the warmth of the gala that had just moments ago wrapped her in celebration. Now, dread twisted in her stomach. How could everything change so rapidly? She peered through the rain-soaked air, the partygoers around her seeming oblivious to the turmoil that had just transpired. Their laughter echoed like distant thunder, clashing with her internal storm. She had to find James again. They needed to be together. He couldn't face this alone. Amelia took a hesitant step back, her heels sinking into the mud beneath her. Overhead, the storm grumbled a low warning. She quickened her pace, weaving between scattered groups of guests who had resumed their idle conversations. The sharp click of her heels on the pavement sounded alien amidst the murmurs of normalcy, a reminder of the surreal reality unfolding. "Where are you, James?" she called softly, her voice swallowed by the rain's relentless patter. But then she remembered the figure in the shadows. A shiver ran down her spine as the image seized her mind. Dark coat, narrowed face, obscured features. Who were they? And why had they been watching? Suddenly, her phone vibrated against her palm, the sound pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced down. A text from James lit up the screen. "Amelia, please come to the hospital right away. I need you." Fear rushed back in, stronger than the downpour. There was an urgency in his words that felt like ice in her veins. She didn't think, she just acted. Turning on her heel, she rushed toward the parking area where the cars were lined up, racing against the alarm bells ringing in her mind. As she reached her car, she fumbled for her keys, heart racing, opened the door and slipped inside, her fingers shaking as she turned the ignition. The engine sputtered briefly before roaring to life, the headlights slicing through the gloom. She pulled out with a jolt, the tires squealing against the slick surface. The hospital loomed ahead like a fortress, its lights a beacon of fear and hope. As she pulled into the parking lot, panic clawed at her throat. She sprinted through the rain, heedless of her ruined dress, pushing past the doors into the sterile air. The smell of antiseptic was a sharp reminder of the horrors that lay within. "James!" she shouted, scanning the waiting area. A knot of anxiety twisted tighter in her chest when she spotted him, alone, hunched over in a chair like a shadow of himself. He looked up, eyes red-rimmed and hollowed with grief. "Amelia," he murmured, rising as if weighed down by invisible chains. They clasped hands, warmth surging through the space between them. "What happened?" she asked, searching his eyes for answers. His voice trembled, and he lowered his gaze. "The doctors, they aren't sure. They think it could be serious." A wave of despair crashed over Amelia. She opened her mouth to speak when a voice boomed down the hallway, chilling her blood. "Is there a James Porter in the waiting area?" They both turned. A doctor in a white coat emerged, grim-faced and holding a clipboard, surrounded by blips and beeps of machines that punctuated the tense atmosphere. "Yes, I'm James," he said, stepping forward. The doctor nodded toward the office. "We need to discuss your father." Amelia felt invisible, the world narrowing to a point. She stood, paralyzed, watching James's expression morph from anxiety to sheer terror as he followed the doctor down the corridor. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw that man again, standing just inside the doorway watching. Her heart thudded in her chest, a chaotic drumbeat urging her to move. Who was he? Why was he here? As the doctor spoke softly to James, urgency built in Amelia's core. She took a step forward, then another, edging closer to the doorway, her heart racing. What connections tied them together? Fear coiled tightly in her stomach. She had to confront the truth, her instincts screaming that something was dreadfully wrong. But, just as she was about to take action, the lights flickered. "Amelia!" James's voice broke through, filled with raw emotion. She turned sharply, her heart in her throat. When she looked back at the entrance, the man was gone. "What was that?" James asked urgently, standing in the shadows of the hallway. I don't know," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. But she knew they were on the edge of something dark. Something that would change everything. What secrets lurked in that darkness, waiting to unravel? The door to the doctor's office swung shut, and silence enveloped Amelia like a heavy blanket. She felt as though the whole world had collapsed into that small, sterile room, James trapped inside, with an uncertainty that gnawed at her insides. Her heart raced as she strained to catch snippets of conversation filtering through the closed door, but all she could make out were muffled tones, rising and falling like waves lapping at an unsteady shore. The familiar weight of dread pressed down on her. She paced the waiting area, each step a battle against the consuming fear that threatened to spill over. She stole glances at the empty corridor, feeling the shadows creep closer. The man she had seen before felt more like a specter now, just out of reach, yet lingering in her mind. "Amelia?" A voice broke her from her thoughts, causing her to jump. A nurse stood before her, clipboard in hand, eyes scrutinizing. "Can I help you?" "It's about James and his father." Her voice wavered, unsure. The nurse nodded slowly, concern etched across her features. "You'll have to wait for the doctor to finish. I understand this is hard, but we'll have news as soon as possible." Before Amelia could respond, the lights flickered again, a sinister dance of shadows playing along the walls. Panic prickled at her skin. She gripped the edge of the waiting room chair, steadying herself. The storm outside finished its roar and settled into a whisper, but in here, everything felt electric, charged with something ominous. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from that hallway. The doctor reappeared, his face clouded in a mixture of empathy and hesitance. James trailed behind him like a lost soul, his eyes hollow and haunted, as if a piece of himself had been left behind in that room. "James," Amelia breathed, rushing to his side. "What did he say?" James swallowed hard, his throat shifting as if weighed down by unshed tears. It could be serious. They're running more tests. They think there might be complications." He looked at her, desperation flickering in his gaze. Without thinking, she wrapped her arms around him, needing to offer support, but he felt so frail, as if he might crumble beneath the weight of everything. The warmth of their connection flickered. Yet, in the moments of closest proximity, the air felt thick with something unspoken, a shared fear that tied them together. And then Amelia felt it, a presence at the periphery. That familiar sensation of being watched. She turned her head toward the entrance, scanning the area. "Amelia?" James's voice cut through her distraction. "Are you okay?" But he didn't see. She did. There, standing at the threshold, the man in the dark coat loomed once more, his features hidden, but his intent more menacing than before. Her heart raced as she took a step toward him, instinctively feeling like she was being pulled into a dangerous game, though she didn't know the rules. "Who are you?" she shouted, cutting through the tension with an urgency that startled several nearby patients. The figure remained motionless and silent, leaning against the doorframe, his presence a threat that eclipsed all the chaos around them. "What are you doing here?" she pressed, her voice a mixture of fear and fury. James's grip on her arm tightened. "Amelia, don't. You don't know him." But it was too late. The man in the doorway pushed off the frame and stepped forward, a slow, deliberate movement that felt loaded with meaning, drenched in shadows. "Because you need to know," he said, his voice deep and chilling, cutting through the silence. And with that, Amelia's entire world teetered on the edge of revelation. What did he know? What secrets did he carry, so closely guarded that they could unravel everything? "Amelia." James's voice sounded desperate as fear clouded his eyes, but she couldn't look away. What was the truth that hung heavily between them? The moment hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament, ready to shatter. Amelia could feel every eye in the waiting room on them, the older woman clutching her knitting, the young mother with a restless toddler, even the quiet man in the corner who had been reading a magazine. They all held their breath, suspended by the tension radiating from the man in the doorway. "Who are you?" she repeated, her voice stronger now, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. The man advanced, the waning light casting an eerie glow across his face. "You should have stayed away, Amelia," he warned, his tone grave. "This isn't a game anymore. They're watching you." Jane shifted protectively in front of Amelia, eyeing the intruder with a mix of suspicion and dread. "What do you know about her?" "About us?" Without breaking eye contact, the man let out a low chuckle, dark and chilling. "You think you're safe here? This hospital, it's a facade. People in white coats don't always have your best interests at heart. While you're busy worrying about your father, there are far worse things creeping up on you." James's breath quickened, and Amelia could feel a tight knot forming in her stomach. "Get out," she said, raising her voice. "You're not welcome here. Whatever you're selling, we're not buying." "Ah, but this isn't about selling," he replied, pressing on, his voice almost hypnotic. "It's about survival. The truth you're afraid to see is right in front of you. You have to confront it or bear the consequences. They are coming for you, and you cannot hide from them, or me." The waiting area grew still, a collective intake of breath echoing across the room. James's grip on her arm tightened further, and Amelia could see the warning flare in his eyes, the same look she'd seen on his face just moments before when facing the doctor's ominous news. With a sudden shift, the man took another step forward, his shadow lengthening, pressing down on them like darkness swallowing light. "You need to trust me," he urged, though the urgency dripped with doubt. "Things are not as they seem. What do you want from us?" Amelia shouted, feeling her pulse quicken as anger blended with confusion. "Just leave us alone." But her voice barely echoed in the stifling air. Whatever tension had gripped the room suddenly snapped like a brittle wire, and the lights overhead flickered violently before plunging them into dimness, sending shadows spiraling across the walls, writhing like specters in a haunted tale. Amelia took a step back, heart racing, mind racing even faster. The man's expression sharpened, and just at that instant, the door of the waiting area burst open. A security guard stormed in, eyes wide with alarm, but Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that this, too, was part of something larger, something twisted. "Step away from her," the guard shouted, raising his hand as a barrier, his uniform stark against the murky shadows. But the man merely smiled, his face softening momentarily, shifting from menace to an unsettling calm. "Don't think you're safe yet," he said over his shoulder. "This has only just begun." As he slipped away through the door, the echo of his words lingered like smoke in the air, a warning no, a premonition clinging to the silence that followed. Amelia crumpled into a chair, the weight of dread heavier than ever. "What was that about?" she whispered to James, their eyes locked in shared confusion and fear. "I don't know," he admitted, breathing heavily. "But we need to find out, and fast. If he's right, if there's something more happening here." Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated from the hallway, followed by a shattered scream that cut through the tension, a sound so out of place, so raw, it made them both jump. "What is happening?" Amelia gasped, panic flooding her senses. The fragile night teetered precariously on the edge of chaos, leaving them desperate for answers and for safety. Amelia's heart raced as she realized the truth might be darker than either of them could fathom. What shadowy forces were closing in, and would they have the strength to face the impending storm? In that moment, she knew the safest place was no longer here, but where the truth lay waiting unraveled and unforgiving. Amelia's heart pounded like a trapped bird in her chest. The scream echoed again, sharper this time, flooded with panic and terror. It was followed by a scuffle. Chairs scraped against the floor, and the terrified faces of onlookers twisted in shock, their own struggles half forgotten as they turned to the hallway. "Stay here," James commanded, his eyes darting toward the darkened corridor. Before Amelia could protest, he moved with purpose, pushing past her as he sprinted toward the sound. "James, no!" she called out, panic igniting within her. But he was gone, shadows swallowed by the ominous gloom. In that half-lit waiting room, Amelia felt the pulsing thread of isolation, two emotions battling inside her, fear and a desperate urge to find him. Muted murmurs spread among the others, yet Amelia felt disconnected from them all. She had seen the man's eyes, the eerie calm that had cloaked his danger. The thought alone sent a chill up her spine. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her resolve. She had to follow him. Without thinking, she burst from her seat, her legs trembling as she stumbled into the darkness. The air around her felt thick and cold, as if it clung to her skin, whispering warnings that it was safer to retreat. But each step forward brought a heat of determination coursing through her, the same intensity that had sparked when she stood up to the man. As she stepped into the hallway, bewildering noises filled her ears, shouts, then thuds, and the unmistakable sound of something heavy hitting the floor. Panic clawed at her throat. "James!" Her voice echoed back, swallowed by the shadows, harsh and vulnerable. She pressed forward, her eyes straining to adjust to the half-light, spotting flickers of movement ahead. The illumination from scattered floor lights barely revealed shapes of people shifting, emotions wildly playing out across their faces. Through the darkness, she spotted him. James was wrestling with someone, a figure clad in dark clothing, their features indistinct, but the sharp glint of recognition struck her. It was the intruder. "Get away from him!" she screamed, not thinking. Panic surged through her, stirring her heart to a frantic rhythm. James twisted away, grappling with the man. "Amelia, stand back!" he shouted, his voice fierce but filled with urgency, as if he feared for her safety. With her breath caught in her throat, Amelia felt the world narrow, time distorting as she weighed her next move. The man had made promises, frightening ones, but was he right? Was this fight worth the risks they had already faced? Could she trust James and herself enough to intervene? Suddenly, the intruder broke free, shoving James back against the wall. Amelia's instinct kicked in. She charged forward without thinking, adrenaline surging. "What are you?" the man began, but she cut him off. "I said, get away." In that moment, her fear morphed into raw courage, ignited by an overwhelming desire to protect James, her heart racing faster than her thoughts. She reached for a metal chair nearby, hefting it as she arrived at the scene, ready to swing it just as a loud crash from the end of the corridor drew their attention. Footsteps thundered closer, heavy, urgent. "Security!" Amelia yelled, hoping against hope that they would arrive in time. The intrusion, this might be a well-orchestrated trap. What else was at stake beyond the waiting room? For a fleeting second, all eyes in the corridor locked onto the approaching sounds. The man's demeanor faltered, giving Amelia an opening, but doubt gnawed at her. Was he truly the enemy here? Was anyone safe at all? Before she could react, a blinding light exploded in her vision, and the shouts of unfamiliar voices filled the hallway. Startled expressions turned into chaos as security flooded in, bumping against each other, desperate to restore control. "Hands in the air! Everybody down!" a voice boomed, slicing through the confusion. But in that instant of confusion, the man slipped away, vanishing into the swirling mass of bodies, a ghost within the chaos. "Amelia!" James reached for her, panic-laden, eyes wide with fear. Her heart sank as uncertainty crept in. What had just happened? Who was watching, and why? And as they stood amidst the chaos, a whisper gnawed at her mind, a chilling reminder of the man's last words. This has only just begun. What truth was buried in the shadows behind the masks of the faces around her? And how long before the storm closed in once more? The lights flickered overhead, casting unsettling shadows in the corridor, while muffled commotion swirled around them. Amelia was panting, her breath quick, heart hammering in her ears, fear wrapping around her like a thick fog. The chaotic atmosphere clawed at her mind, her thoughts racing as the reality of the situation pressed down like a weight. Where did he go? She breathed, scanning the crowd, eyes darting from face to face. The shouting echoed, voices pleading for order, but in that moment, she felt lost in a sea of frantic bodies. She was just another soul fighting to stay afloat. "Focus, Amelia," James urged, shaking her gently, bringing her attention back to him. "We need to get out of here. Now." But the darkness loomed larger. "What if he is still here?" she whispered, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The last image of the man's calm, piercing gaze flickered in her mind, and she shuddered. "What if he comes back?" "Then we face him together," James assured her, his grip tightening on her shoulder. "But we need to move, Amelia. The guards are disoriented. We might have a chance to slip past before they regroup." Every instinct screamed at her to stay put, but the longing to escape grew stronger. Other people were hurriedly trying to make their way toward the exits, their eyes wild with fear. Maybe this wasn't just about them anymore. The storm was here, hard and unyielding. "Okay," she nodded, steeling herself. "Let us go." They plunged deeper into the throng, jostling through shoulders, bodies stumbling back and forth, people slipping on the polished floor in their rush to get away. Amelia caught glimpses of terrified faces, and from somewhere in the distance, a woman's cries pierced through the chaos. Her heart twisted at the sound, her head pounding with urgency. Just as they neared the exit, her hand brushed against something hard and cold, a metal barrier. Panic rose as she turned to see an imposing figure at the door, arms crossed, blocking their way. "Where do you think you're going?" he barked, his eyes narrowing with hostility. "Let us out!" Amelia shouted. "We need to go. There is something dangerous here." The guard waved his hand dismissively, his expression icy. "You need to stay put. We can't let anyone in or out. Not until we figure out what is going on." Amelia felt her breath quicken. "But people are hurt. There's an intruder." Just then, the piercing wail of an alarm blared through the air. It sent chills racing down her spine. The sense of impending dread thickened around them. "It doesn't matter, everyone stay inside." The guard barked again, just as the silence shattered with a heavy thud, echoing from the end of the hallway. The room collectively held its breath, fear palpable and pressing as shadows twisted around them. James leaned closer to Amelia, his breath warm against her ear. "We have to go around him. Trust me," he whispered. The certainty in his tone rekindled her fading courage. She gulped, nodding as they turned to slip away from the door, seeking cover behind the nearest wall. The sounds of chaos and alarm pulsed around them, fueling her pulse. Time stretched as they ducked behind a large potted plant, heartbeats drumming loudly against her ribs. "What now?" Amelia held her breath, anxiety curling tightly around each word. "Just wait. We can outsmart him," James replied, his eyes darting, calculating. His focus steeled, she prayed silently for a spark of hope, a moment of courage to help them break free. But the air felt charged, as if the very walls might collapse at any moment. Were they truly safe? Or were they simply biding their time, waiting for the storm to leap upon them once more? Then, as if in a dream, the lights flickered again and plunged them back into darkness, thick, suffocating void. A gasp escaped Amelia's lips as her heart sank deeper, fearing that whatever had come for them had finally arrived. "We need to move," James urged, but shadows danced in the corners of her vision. And just like that, something powerful surged from the hallway, a surge of energy that pulled at her. Amelia froze. She didn't want to know what waited beyond the veil of darkness. But she couldn't hold back any longer. They were in the storm now. Every instinct whispered to flee, but so did the promise of hidden truth. And though the ground beneath her felt unsteady, a thought burned in her mind, a chilling reminder of that dark figure. What if this was only the beginning? Smoke, panic, fear, the air crackled with it all. And in the heart of the chaos, Amelia gripped James's hand tightly, ready to plunge into the unknown. "Together," she said, determination lighting in her eyes. But they weren't prepared for what awaited them just steps ahead. James and Amelia stood at the precipice of an unfolding nightmare. Shadows flickered around them, thick with tension and uncertainty. The chaos looming just beyond the darkness felt almost alive, ready to reach out and grab them if they dared to step forward. "Stay close," James urged, pulling her to him, his grip firm yet reassuring. She felt the warmth radiating between them, a small flame in an engulfing storm. The weight of the unseen threat pressed down on them, yet within the fray, a glimmer of courage sparked in Amelia's heart. The chaos behind them, and the dark figure who once appeared to threaten them, suddenly felt like pieces in a larger puzzle. "Do you think he knows something?" she whispered, fear clogging her throat. It was a question that hovered in the air, unanswered but heavy. "I don't know, but we have to find out," James said, determination brightening his eyes. "We can't hide forever." As they edged forward, the sound of footsteps thrumming down the polished corridor reverberated louder, echoing their heartbeat. "There." James pointed to a side hallway just opening up, illuminated faintly by flickering emergency lights. They slipped into it, hearts pounding in synchrony. Amelia pressed her shoulder against the cool wall, trying to quiet the storm of emotions raging within her. The air was thick with the sterile smell of antiseptic, mixing with the metallic tang of fear. With each cautious step, she felt adrenaline surge through her veins. They emerged from the darkness, the tension buzzing around them as urgency took hold. Suddenly, as they cornered the hallway, a nearby door swung open, and a nurse rushed out, wide-eyed and wild. "You can't be here. You have to leave." Her voice was a frantic plea. "They're trying to contain the situation." "What is happening?" Amelia asked, panic threading through her voice like a tightrope. "There has been a breach," the nurse gasped, glancing over her shoulder. "They think it might involve—" She paused, collecting her breath. "Your friend. You need to get to safety?" "Why didn't he?" Amelia started, but another crashing sound erupted from down the hallway, splintering her thoughts. The lights overhead flickered violently, casting an eerie green glow across everything, illuminating shadows that twisted, blurred, and stretched. "Go!" James shouted, the urgency heightening as he pulled Amelia toward the exit. They burst through the door into the emergency room entrance, navigating the chaos, screams, whispers, erratic heartbeats. As they stumbled through, Amelia spotted that figure, the man in the dark coat standing at the far end, his features still cloaked in shadow. Frozen, she felt rooted to the ground as he turned his gaze to meet hers, an unsettling familiarity creeping through her skin. "Amelia!" James called, snapping her from the fog of confusion. "This way." But just as they took a step toward safety, the lights dimmed again, and a loud explosion of thunder rumbled through the building as alarms blared anew. "Where do we go?" Amelia urged, a wave of fear crashing over her as she witnessed others scrambling in panic. It felt like the walls were closing in, suffocating her within the storm. "Follow me!" James shouted, determination etched in every line of his face. He took her hand, anchoring her in the moment, and pulled her toward a side corridor leading to the back exit. Each step felt thunderous, ringing in her ears as anxiety tightened her chest. "Trust me," he breathed into her ear, his warm breath igniting her resolve. The shadows curled ominously, but she could feel that flame of courage refusing to extinguish. "Let us go!" Her voice surged with newfound strength. They darted through the corridor, the sound of feet pounding, the noise of chaos trailing behind them. Outside, the night air wrapped around them heavy and alive. The rain had subsided, leaving a mist that curled around their feet. They burst into the parking lot, relief flooding her senses. "Where do we go now?" she gasped, glancing back at the hospital. It loomed like a fortress, a creature of secrets waiting to swallow them anew. "I saw a car. Over there." James pointed to a black sedan parked innocuously off to the side. As they dashed toward it, a flicker caught Amelia's eye. The dark figure had reappeared, standing discreetly under the awning. "James!" She tugged at him, but he didn't stop. "No! We can't! We have to know!" he insisted, determination set in his features, the tension of the last few hours visible on his brow. But in that moment, the man stepped forward, his voice rising above the chaos of the night. "You don't understand what's at stake. Amelia, listen to me." His tone cut through her confusion, urgent and earnest. "What do you want?" she yelled, frustration bursting forth, but curiosity snaked its way into her heart. "You need to find the truth, and time is running out." He gestured toward the car. "He will try to keep you away from it. Stay close to each other. Don't lose that connection. It's your only hope." "Who are you?" James asked, vulnerability lacing his tone, but the man had already begun fading back into the shadows, as if he was never there. "Wait!" Amelia shouted, her resolve faltering. "Trust him," James murmured, squeezing her hand. "We'll find out together." With that, they climbed into the car, heart rates racing, both uncertain about their next steps yet undeniably bound by the journey ahead. The hum of the engine roared to life, and as they sped away, Amelia glanced back at the hospital, the darkness still swirling at its edges, shadows reaching out as if trying to draw them back in. They were out now, but somehow she knew this was just the start of beginning woven in a tapestry of shadow, danger, and the promise of truth. And as Amelia stared out into the night, the world felt alive with possibilities. Mysteries thrummed all around. What lay ahead would challenge them both, but they had each other a spark that could not be extinguished. "Are you ready for this?" James asked, determination glinting in his bright blue eyes. With an exhale that released the burden of weight upon her shoulders, Amelia nodded. Together. So they sped into the depths of the unknown, ready to unearth the truth that had been hidden in the darkness. And as the past closed behind them, the future loomed ahead filled with secrets waiting to be revealed. Now, the real journey was about to begin. Don't forget to subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.